Hello and welcome to the Banker Pre-Sibos video. My name's Jane Cooper and I'm the Global Transaction Services Editor of the Banker magazine.
I'm John Beck, the Banker's Technology Editor.
And Sibos is approaching, and this year it's going to be in Toronto. So one of the things we'll notice is the North American contingent. In the previous years it's been held in other locations. So when it was in Hong Kong there were quite a lot of Asian banks present, and Asia was one of the major themes of the conference, with people discussing the potential of the markets in Asia such as India and China, and also the competition from the Asian players. Then the year after that, in 2010, it was in Amsterdam. And there, the European contingent were discussing regulation and also the recovery from the crisis. And these themes will probably continue this year, particularly the role of transaction banking and how transaction banking can continue to be profitable, and the future and the role of transaction banking.
So, as Jane said, Sibos has moved on pretty far from its origins as a low-key chat about messaging to sort of spanning many different business areas, functions and regions. This year's conference agenda is probably broader than it ever has been before, and it's built around four main topics: regulation, technology, changing landscapes, and global and local perspectives. Some of these themes are sort of old standards at Sibos, and we'll talk a little bit more about them later, but others, such as technology, are increasingly prominent. In fact, we spoke to Lázaro Campos, Swift CEO, in an interview which will be published as part of our Sibos coverage in our September issue, and he was very keen to stress the importance of technology this year. And unlike some years gone by, technology actually has a dedicated stream as part of the conference agenda, instead of having the techies confined to the exhibition floor. Lázaro said partly this was because the importance is growing for the Sibos audience, and partly because they want to attract more technologists to Sibos itself. So on the agenda you'll see all the usual buzzwords like social media, cloud and mobile banking. Another part of Sibos' technology focus is something which Swift has christened InnoTribe, which basically allows delegates to team up and present new business ideas to venture capitalists. I mean, it all sounds a bit like TV's Dragon's Den, but it could be interesting at least, and we look at how successful that's been as part of our coverage too.
And what you're saying about technology, while that is one exciting area of innovation, it could potentially be a threat to the banks in global transaction services. I mean, the area that GTS covers is very broad, and within that sphere at the moment there's all these pockets of innovation, and there's always discussion of the non-bank players and the challenge that they pose to the banks. And this was one of the themes in our GTS supplement for the September issue. And it's impossible to list all the examples in one article or even in this slot. But one of the main themes was that a lot of these non-bank players, they don't see themselves as competitors to the banks. They see themselves as partners. So almost the banks sort of are playing the role where they can pull together all these different services and solutions. So they pull it together for what their client needs. And this could actually sort of put the banks in a role as an agent. And then this raises the question, well, what are the banks actually for? And one of the things is that they have the financial strength and the clout to do the financing. But there are also other players that can do financing. For example, hedge funds, they could start getting into trade finance. And this is one of the areas that could be the sort of unintended consequences of regulation of the banks. If banks are subject to stricter capital requirements, then that could open up opportunities for the hedge fund industry in the area of trade finance, for example.
So speaking of regulation, I mean, obviously that's been a huge area of concern for every part of the banking industry, and Sibos' audience is no exception. And as I said earlier, it's a big part of the conference agenda, and for good reason. I mean, a lot of the people I've spoken to recently have said that the sheer volume is threatening to overwhelm them completely. It's a particularly big problem in Europe, where one banker told me that they had to scour the European Commission website pretty much every day just to keep up with the laundry list of regulations. And in Europe, one of the big concerns is obviously SEPA, which has been a bit of a never-ending saga of late. I mean, banks, businesses and regulators all seem to agree that creating a single payment zone and increasing competition is a good thing, but there doesn't appear to be much in the way of political will to actually get things moving. The general consensus seems to be that things will be finalised by the end of the year. And with that, we'll see an end date, probably around 2014, which should at least help get things moving there. In the US, instead of a laundry list of regulation, they just have the Dodd-Frank bill, which is monstrous now and looks like it could impact on just about every aspect of the financial industry. One bank told me that they had, I think, around 100 subgroups looking at its potential impact. It's designed to address potential weaknesses exposed by the crisis, but additional clauses have been added which could be specifically concerning to the Sibos audience. These include things like attempting to regulate overseas remittances and kind of better protect consumers when they're moving money internationally. In Asia, there are less region-specific regulatory concerns, but they are likely to share some of the worries that, as bankers across the globe, namely Basel III. For the Sibos audience, I think a lot of the concerns are going to be around, as Jane said, unintended consequences, such as the potential impact on different balances and services, and the impact on trade finance has been a particular concern. Certainly there's going to be plenty of things to keep bankers around the world occupied.
And I'm sure all of these issues are going to be discussed during the conference. For our coverage, you can see our GTS supplement in the September issue, as well as articles on the website. And also we'll be at the conference doing video interviews with senior executives, The View from Sibos, which you can check out at www.thebanker.com.